With regards to the Ramsey case, so really I should be saying with regards to the death of Jonbenet Ramsey, this is a Christmas time tragedy, a tragedy that was possibly years in the making. And Jonbenet Ramsey would be about 30 years old now, and she 100% would have been a beautiful young woman. Maybe she would have been following in her father John's footsteps as an entrepreneur. Maybe she would have been a social media influencer, or who knows? The world will never know. Jonbenet never got to reach her potential. She never got to give things a try. Some of the things I'm going to talk about with regards to this, I just thought I'd have a quick chat with you about it now. Other themes surrounding the relationships in the family, in the Ramsey family, because I find them really interesting with all the circumstance surrounding that family. Jonbenet really was fulfilling Patsy's dreams, and Jonbenet would say, you know, the medals, well, they're really Mum's, you know, medals, the prizes, the pageant prizes, and they're for my mum. Now, was Patsy Ramsey simply enjoying the child beauty pageant circuit because she had been a beauty queen herself, Miss West Virginia, Melbourne Mama, take me home, country roads, you know, because she was on the circuit herself as a very delicate, graceful, petite, poised young woman. Patsy Ramsey was 21 when she met John Ramsey. He was 35. He'd already had 3 children. You know, was it to do with her own beauty queen history? Is it just something that she liked, so she thought her child would enjoy it? Or was there something more sinister? Because Patsy Ramsey had cancer twice. Final time, obviously, she succumbed. And no doubt the stress of losing her daughter added to it. It added to her demise. But, you know, if you're going through a certain type of cancer, how sexual are you? How female do you feel? How womanly do you feel? Do you feel whole for your husband? You know, some of the things that really always bugged me about Patsy Ramsey is her manner of speech, and is her manner. And not only post Jonbenet's death, but, you know, Patsy Ramsey was kind of ahead of her time, like John, because John was, you know, developing software that has made, you know, so many people's work lives quite different. He was at the vanguard of the computer industry when it comes to this commercialization of software, and indeed, you know, he'd sold his company for $1 billion. I won't get sidetracked onto that for a moment. But, you know, Patsy was also very forward in making film of her family. But it always just makes me sick in the stomach when I see her with Jonbenet and Burke, no John Ramsey, in Christmas films, and she'll be, hello, Daddy's not home. Here's Jonbenet, and here's Bennett. Here's Burke. You know, come into our home. Say hi, Jonbenet. You know, it's something about this just gives me a cold shiver. Now, you can't tell me that there wouldn't have been a single moment in time where Jonbenet Ramsey couldn't have been in a Christmas video. But, you know, it really amped up from her first cancer, the sexualization of her young child. This is when it started, and the costumes actually sometimes emulating exactly some of the, you know, the glamorous costumes that Patsy Ramsey had worn as a young woman in her pageants. The black and white, kind of classic look. The showgirl with the white feathers, that look. Patsy has some very beautiful, dainty looking photos as a showgirl. You know, Patsy wasn't Baba Boom, but she was petite, delicate, graceful, classic, you know, in that southern way, and not in an ostentatious way. But she loved to live with an ostentatious extravagance. She really did. And I know I'm sort of a bit meandering here. I'm so sorry. I didn't, you know, I just sort of decided to start talking because, you know, I just wanted to introduce you to some of the things that I think about when I think about the case of Jonbenet Ramsey. You know, and it's weird, you know, John's son is called John. So he did have a son. People say, why didn't they call Burke after John? Why did it have to be Jonbenet? But John already had a son named John. I think it's John Anthony or something like that. And Patsy Ramsey at one point goes, well, I didn't kill Jonbenet. And John Ramsey didn't kill Jonbenet. Well, we know John Ramsey Jr. Was coming back into Colorado, but he wasn't quite there at the time. So no, he didn't. I'm not saying anything specific, and I don't know if I'll actually tell you what I really think. You know, it's interesting too because, yeah, that brings to mind something I do want to talk to you about Linda Arndt as well. You know, when Linda Arndt is locking eyes with John Ramsey while he's carrying a rigor mortis, Jonbenet up the stairs and laying her down in a hallway near the lounge, and she locks eyes, and, you know, she's not saying that John is specifically the killer, but that's what people extrapolate from that. Just because she's making crazy eyes and saying, and I knew there and then, who, you know, it doesn't, don't jump to conclusions either. Yeah, but you know, these relationships with the family, I mean, look, on one hand, you know, Patsy, it's great that she was a slob when it comes to housework and all sorts of things like that, because, you know, maybe she's spending just more time trying to get everything she can out of having a family. She feels like maybe she's gotten a second chance. You know, this is until after Jonbenet's dead, and she gets the cancer that women get when they've got a broken heart or they've had that type of shock, and that is breast cancer. But, you know, the house was quite chaotic. It was ramshackle. I mean, this is a family that appearances did matter on some level, but there was not that attention to detail where, I mean, they can't have been too scared of judgment. I mean, they didn't fix a basement window. Now, who wouldn't just get that done? Now, why can't they just get that done? They're too busy. It's not a priority. It's just can't be bothered. They've got their mind on other things other than boring household maintenance. It's interesting. I mean, look, no one came in through that window. They could have walked in one of the doors actually that night. I don't know if anyone realizes that, but you know, security wasn't great, and they don't need to be climbing in dirty old basement windows. And in fact, it was the investigator who left that um, footmark on the wall under the window. It wasn't there in the crime scene pictures. Then after John had this investigator, you know, investigate, and they were pushing that intruder theory, that's when that black footmark appeared on the wall. It was that dude's footmark. People look at that and say, look at the footmark on the wall, someone's climbed in that window. No, that was in the reenactment. Yeah. So, you know, what am I trying to discuss with you here? How do you think, or what do you think the relationships really were like between, you know, Burke and Jonbenet and the older siblings, the two surviving siblings? One of John's daughters had died in a car accident already. You know, what do you think about John Ramsey and his role in the family, and how did he feel, what did he feel his role was? You know, as he the machismo breadwinner, with the wife that, oh, she just does her stuff. I mean, he wasn't making any demands on the family, it seems. He wasn't saying to Patsy, well, you know, why isn't our house cleaner? Why isn't that window fixed that I smashed? I mean, how many of you think, okay, well, that shows months and months of premeditation? Smash the window. You know, John's slick. Okay, John is slick. He's a maneuverer. He's someone that can plan steps and steps. You know, you have to be to do what he did, to build up a business how he did, to be that successful in the field that he was successful in, to recognize an industry, to take that timing, to really run with it. You know, it takes a lot of commitment, it takes balls, but it takes talent, it takes an ability to plot and to, you know, plan. And, you know, he's a slick guy. You know, he's impressive like that. A lot of people mistakenly think the 118,000 bonus was paid just recently. It was actually something from before, but there was other checks just sitting around, $7,000 sitting there ready to be paid off to somewhere, or signed but not written out to anyone. I mean, there's a deal of, I don't know if it's apathy, but the household had, you know, they were nearly bohemian in some ways, with a flocky knocky nihilipilification of, you know, just regular things that, you know, they probably see as boring, you know, housework and spending time on various things. And, you know, they had the money to pay for housekeepers and for gardeners and the like, you know. And the housekeeping and the housekeepers, you know, if you know anything about the time around Jonbenet's death at that Christmas period, there are some very bizarre things going on there, to do with outfits of Patsy and Jonbenet. You know, I just feel there's a very strange relationship that Patsy had with her children. I don't know if she really emotionally connected with her children. It's only me, but I just really don't like the way she says that child, or, you know, this child, my child, her, you know, about Jonbenet, in some instances. I don't like it. She objectifies Jonbenet herself. And as I've said, you know, Jonbenet was an extremely beautiful child. What a beautiful little girl. And, you know, she obviously spent time learning with her mother, learning her routines, how to stand, the little songs. And she was a very poised little girl on stage as well. But did she wholly like it? Not really, not particularly, but she did do it to please her mother. And maybe that's why John put up with that, because it pleased Patsy. Patsy had been through a rough trot. But yeah, I find it creepy. Maybe she would have been in pageants anyway, whether they'd stayed down south, whether they'd moved to New York instead of Colorado, I don't know. But the timing of it with Patsy's cancer, I wonder how that affected her as a woman, and affected her sexual relationship with John. I mean, you know, I wouldn't know. But, you know, I don't know if John would have been faithful. We know who he was sleeping with afterwards, and surely that shows his shrewdness. Let's just put it that way. And yeah. So, you know, that does concern me, the sexualization of this young girl when a woman is going through a sexual crisis of her own. You know, and the way that she would speak about Jonbenet, and you know, it might seem like Jonbenet was spoiled, but I think there was some callousness and some calculatedness there. I heard recently, it was on Nick Van Der Leek, it was on True Crime Rocket Science. He said that her little Bichon Frise dog, little white fluffy dog, wasn't really accepted in as part of the family. It was often at neighbours. You know, it kind of was a placating gift to Jonbenet. John had said, you know, Patsy, get Jonbenet a dog. But, you know, Patsy didn't really want it around. It was a distraction, no doubt. Maybe, you know, she didn't feel she had time for it. But I feel like maybe that really hurt Jonbenet to not have her dog with her at times. And what would have happened if the dog was there in the house on that Christmas night? Would the murder have taken place? Do you believe the murder took place in the home? Do you believe the murder took place at that time, that night, and not earlier? Where are the smoke and mirrors? What do you think about Jonbenet's changes of clothes, about the garrote, about the torch, about the train track and the marks? Yeah, I mean, there's so much to unpack, obviously, with this case. And I'm not sure how to go about making a little series about it, maybe just breaking it down into subjects and saying, look, hey, this is what I think on the subject of that morning, you know, the events of that morning, getting the Fleet Whites around, or the Whites around to the home amongst others. Maybe I could do another video on the things that have been said in the interviews by the Ramseys, because it's very interesting, some of the things that are dropped in these interviews. Maybe I could do a video on Burke and the way his stories played out. And maybe, yeah, on the ransom note, yeah, what do you think about the ransom note? Who do you think actually wrote it? And do you think the person that wrote the note is the killer? Anyway, this has gone on probably 15 minutes, longer than I thought it would. So thanks for listening. Yeah, so I just wanted to get the ball rolling with some of the things I think about when it comes to the Jonbenet Ramsey case. I think it's been on a lot of people's minds because it is Christmas time. And it was, you know, obviously a Christmas time incident, event, murder. You know, so do you think it was planned? Do you think the family is involved, or do you think it was an intruder? Why do you think the Ramseys were covering up? Why do you think the Ramseys would speak with press but not police? What do you think about some of the things that the Ramseys have said? What do you think about the dynamic between John and Patsy? What do you think their relationship was like and their marriage? What do you think that was all about, really? Did you know, and Patsy dropped this into an interview, it wasn't just Jonbenet and Burke Ramsey who wet their beds. Every single child of John Ramsey was a bedwetter. Yeah, so you can just think about that for a little while. And yeah, I'm going to go and walk Carnivore Dog. He's going to start getting a little bit whiny soon. But yeah, you know, I'm really looking forward to your comments on this one, because I do want to know what you think. It's a very divisive case. Very divisive. I mean, we've got the CBS, I think it was a 2-part special, and I'm not sure how many years ago now it was. But there was this sort of forensic team put together that found, you know, that talk about, you know, the DNA on the underpants. They do sort of recreations. They actually rebuilt part of the Ramsey home in a warehouse so that they could walk through and have a real feel for the home and what was going on there at the time, at the Christmas time. And, you know, this is who Burke Ramsey is suing for, I think, 600 million American dollars, because they came up with a scenario that, you know, Jonbenet should not have been trying to eat Burke's pineapple, and so he picked up a torch and hit her on the head, and the parents covered up, something like that. Yeah, it's a super divisive case because, you know, you've got John Ramsey, who's very capable of casting shade on many people, and he could do it as a strategy. So did he write the ransom note and purposefully, you know, put little lights onto Fleet and onto Santa and onto Patsy and onto his own son, etc., etc., you know? You know, and onto other people with specific terminology. Listen carefully. Something that other people say, Mrs. White, I think. And, you know, the naval things where, you know, Fleet White being in the Navy, well, so was John, wasn't he? You know, there's so much shade being cast. There's so much manipulation. There's so much behind the scenes that people didn't realize was happening as it's unfolding, that you only sort of know now. For example, people didn't know that the grand jury had voted to indict the Ramseys. And yeah, the DA, he just made the announcement on his own that he wasn't going to go ahead. You know, but people don't realize, and so it goes around the world again and again. Oh, you know, the Ramseys, no, well, they're innocent. You know, they've been announced as innocent. It simply is not, that is not the case. They're not innocent, and they have not been charged. I mean, they've not been proven innocent, or they've not been charged. They just are. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a tragedy on the scale of Madeleine McCann's death, because it is abusing a child over and over again since their death, isn't it? When there's no closure, and it is a disgusting thing to do to your own child if, in fact, you know, a parent is guilty. Anywho, that really is enough from me. So drop your comments down there, because, you know, just please write the things about the case that really have always confounded you, or things that you've noticed that you thought odd, patterns that you've seen. Like, there is a lot of things, running threads that run through with Patsy, with John, that the more you know, the more fascinating it is. Look, and yeah, I've got a lot to go and relook at now, because a year ago I knew this case inside out, because, as I've said before, I was going to start true crime talks about this case, but there's a lot I don't have just on the tip of my tongue anymore. But, you know, I want to know what you think, and yeah, see you later. Bye.